Hello, beautiful boss babes. Are you ready to chase life with Kelly? Well, I'm your host, Kelly Chase, and I'm so excited you're here. We are going to talk about all things love, dating, relationships, money mindset. We're going to dive deep into self-love, worthiness. I am going to bring on some incredibly empowering guests. We're going to have fun, we're going to laugh, and perhaps we're even going to shed some tears together. I am here to empower you, inspire you, and motivate you to create the life you crave. I am so excited for today's episode. Let's dive in. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the show, to the Chase Life with Kelly show. I am your host, Kelly Chase. I have such an incredible guest on with us today. She is a Brooklyn-based content creator, model, and writer. She is, if you land on her Instagram, you will just, and like, you will feel the self-love and self-empowerment. And like, that's what happened for me. I just like want to consume all of her content. It was so great. But Kendra is carving out a unique space centered around the messages of spirituality, personal power, authenticity, and joy. She runs a Substack newsletter, Come Home, and is an author of a forthcoming Oracle deck, the Realest Oracle. Yes. Hello and welcome to the show, Kendra Austin. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm great. How's your heart this week?
It's had its ups and downs.
Absolutely.
It's thriving. It's beating. But we as humans, we go through challenges, some personal things that are going on. And so it's had its day.
Totally. So. Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for that honesty. It's like when I ask that, I really mean it. Yeah. And also I love people who say the quiet part out loud. Like, I think this is actually a really trying time for a lot of people. As a crystal bitch, there are some astrological reasons why. But yeah, like a lot of people are like kind of moving through the muddy waters of, I think, this winter and how much challenge I feel like it brought a lot of people. I can feel a little bit of that like melting. I feel like we're in a melting phase now. Spring is coming. The sun will come out again, and so will all of our personalities. But in the meantime, I appreciate that candor because I think a lot of people are feeling just a little bit like, I feel like I have everything I need, but something's off. Something's off and things are going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I'm happy that we can be here to support each other.
Me too. Yeah, absolutely. So first, I want you to tell me about the Realest Oracle, since
sure.
The new.
Yes. I have it with me, my baby. I'm so excited. It's called the Realest Oracle, Finding Magic in the Mundane. It's a 53 card deck and guidebook. To be honest, it just kind of felt like this project was like the apex of like what joy means to me or meant to me at the time that I decided to sell it. That's kind of like I feel like the kind of creator that I am in this lifetime. It felt like this like grand, like, oh my gosh moment of like, I am just really here to create whatever it is that brings me joy and the time that I feel that way in hopes that other people will find space in it themselves. And this was just like the current manifestation of that for me. I, like most people in 2020, got to hear the gentle, compassionate, and most accessible voice of my internal guidance for the first time in the quiet of lockdown. And I feel like I got to look in the mirror and see myself honestly without the echo of the voice of my parents and partners that have hurt me and, like one-sided friendships and challenging career partnerships. Like I got to just hear myself. And I was like, actually, I feel really confident of who I am and what I'm supposed to do and what love looks like for me, and what showing up for that love on the daily looks like for me. And it's not like the dancing orbs. It's not the crystals. It's not all of the extra bullshit that people think they need to take on into like that spiritual practice after having that aha moment or like that spiritual awakening. It's not necessarily all those things. Those are just manifestations of our awareness of how important and powerful we are, both to ourselves and our community and the collective, right? And the gifts that we can bring to the collective. So I wanted to create a deck that I felt like echoed that, because I became like quite a collector of like spiritual tools. And I was like, all of these are giving like weird medieval white person energy. There's like, no, there's like Pokemon cards. There's like, where, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, where's the diversity? Like, where are the girls crying on the train? Where are the dating apps? Like, where's therapy? Like, where are these things where I feel like I'm doing the work, the environments, the people, the faces, and the joy that I'm doing the work in? Right. Why do I have to like read through the lines? Like, let me just see it, you know? Yeah. So I decided to create it because I feel like the most powerful people in my life don't have the languages of the average, what they think to be like a spiritual person. That doesn't make their intuition any less valuable, any less important to their journey, or any less like needing of being tapped into, of being practiced. And I feel like I created a deck for those people who are maybe a little bit skeptical or don't really want to have to find a new language in order to access spirituality, because they shouldn't have to.
Right.
So this is kind of my ode to my own confusion and just sheer hunger for an intuitive connection and a connection with self. Yeah. And I'm so excited for people to use it. It's going to be out July 18th, but pre-orders are available literally everywhere where you buy a book now.
So exciting. That is really cool.
Thank you so much.
What is, if you could share like one of the cards, like what is an example?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for asking. So here are the back of the cards. This is like an auric field. Each of the cards does have like the element of like color theory, like energetic theory, numerology. That way, like if any of those things are relevant to you, you can use them, right? Like, so let's say like yellow is like your aura color and you end up pulling a spread of like 3 yellows, like, then that it has particular meaning for you maybe. So let me actually show one of my favorite cards, because I just think they're so fun.
That is fun.
Okay. Like honestly, simply like rest. This is my rest card.
That's so cool.
It's literally just a
bathtub.
Exactly. In a bathtub. She's watching TV on her iPad. She's got a glass of wine. You know what I'm saying? Like it truly, truly is that simple. Here's Boss Up. This is like represents a time in your life where you really, really need to be super administrative and honest with yourself about the work that needs to be done. And it's like, she's just in her house with her dog, looking at all the things that like will require time and energy of her and assessing that wisely. You know, like it's just it's so practical. And then this is my favorite card in the deck. This is my community card. And it's literally just 3 women celebrating each other. She does have a cochlear implant. I also felt it was really important that disability, queerness, body, like all body inclusion, of course, people of all different races be included in the deck, because that was also something I hadn't seen before. So it is distinctly queer and BIPOC heavy and disability inclusive as well. So all of those things were really important to me.
I love that. I love that. And did you design, like create the artwork for all of it?
No. So actually my designer, her name is Bria Benjamin. She is such an established designer and illustrator in her field, but she and I actually went to college together. So for many, many years, I like knew there would come a time when I would want to like bring her in as a collaborator. And the second that I decided to pitch this to my publisher, I was like, I know exactly who it needs to be. So we now have like a 10-year-old friendship. And now this is our first collaboration together. And she's such an incredible person, but there is a full manuscript. There's a full guidebook that has all the descriptions, and I wrote all of those, came up with all the concepts for the cards. Then she and I kind of collaborated on like what that would feel like to bring a feeling to life, to bring a transitionary phase or a phase of grief or misunderstanding or lack. Like, what does that feel like? And how is that expressed in daily life in a way that people can just know off of visual, that they can relate to?
Yeah, I love that. That is so neat. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. So what you mentioned, about defining love in a sense. So what does love mean to you?
I love that question. Thank you so much. Love to me is ever changing and exists in the context of who or what you are attempting to love and what makes them the best. Right. But I will say I definitely observe like the bell hooks definition of love. Like love is the habit, the daily practice of showing up for my well-being and yours, and the distance between those two things. So to me, love is a dedicated act, an intention, a practice, And also, of course, the challenge, right? The challenge of showing up to the reflection that you see in the eyes of the people that you love, showing up to the challenge of being called to be better even when it hurts or you're frustrated or you don't agree. And also just being called to change, right? Like allowing you yourself, the people that you love, the projects and career that you love, letting all of those things change within their necessity and natural flow, and finding your space there, in accordance to like what they need right now and what you need.
I love that. Yes. And I'm probably going to come back to that because I want you to share your story with us. I want my listeners to know who you are and everything. I just wanted to like hone in on the Oracle deck first for sure.
I love it. Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, I landed on your page and it was very like, just so empowering and inspiring. And, but yeah, so I want people to know all about you and how you got into this space of, sharing your voice and all of that too. So
sure. Yeah. Thank you so much. I mean, I feel like every experience really kind of hit it for me. Like I grew up kind of all over the place. I grew up in San Diego. I was a military brat. And then my parents divorced very young, and my mom was like a single parent. And I have an older brother and a younger sister. And we just like, I grew up really, really feeling like so much room to explore myself, just because there was so much transition and a lot of moving. And my siblings and I are like 10 years apart. And so we kind of all had our own like only child experience. And yeah, I feel like I just spent a lot of time like in solitude in my like younger years. And kind of like in reflection of like what I really, really enjoyed. And when I was younger, I like loved like Teen Vogue magazine. I loved the editorial content. I actually loved the writing when I was younger, but I also just obviously loved the beauty, like the expression of beauty that can exist and the ways in which we can occupy it. And unfortunately, in those at that time, I didn't see myself reflected in those narratives or understanding of beauty. And that's just a challenge for all little girls, right? Like we exist in like such like an unforgiving atmosphere for what some might call like the divine feminine. Like we're in such an unforgiving atmosphere for people who are looking to like create and explore and also just like occupy beauty that doesn't like beg to be loved. Right. And I think that like, that is what people want women to be, is just constantly begging to be loved, constantly buying the new like magic bullet to become thinner, constantly buying into the next beauty trend, constantly buying the next body. Right. And it's like, that's just not it. That felt like a futile practice to me. But as a kid, I was like, I will do anything to be able to have what I see in these magazines. And like, if I can't have that, then I'm just going to go full balls to the wall in the opposite direction. And so growing up as like somebody who was moving a lot and was able to like redefine myself often, I was noticing the ways in which people might not react to me well in what it was attached to. So like, that may be like how loud and like outgoing I was, like my voice being, like my voice being so present in a room, like those aren't things that people usually like from women. Right. Or like being in a bigger body my whole life. That's not something that people like from women. Being a Black woman, like those are all things where I felt like, oh, like people just inherently don't accept me for these things. And that's really challenging. And it made me feel really small. And like, I wasn't capable of like kind of occupying what I felt like at the time was my purpose, which was becoming the first Black female president of the United States. I was like, that's it. That's all I need to do. Just one simple task, know? And so those things all felt like they were standing in the way. And so I feel like, throughout my adolescence, teenage years, and up until my early 20s, I moved through that feeling of lack of belonging or not enoughness. At first combating those identities. So like being in the constant cycle of diet culture and starvation and disordered relationship with my body, and how much that seeps into a disordered relationship with your mind, your spirit, not being able to hear yourself or your needs, not being able to communicate them externally. And of course that resulting in like falling into like toxic relationships, toxic friendships, not a great relationship with even my own family members, right? Like that is all very cyclical and synchronistic. So I feel like it was often like me in a battle with my body and with my own identities and trying to change them. And then it kind of just shifted to being like angry externally. Like once I feel like I kind of started doing the work, and a lot of that came through my career. So like when I graduated college, I was like, okay, so this president thing is not happening. It's not for me. It's not really what I want. And I kind of returned. And of course I was like, also, I went to the University of Texas and I was in Austin at the time. And I kind of decided like, well, what did you used to do? Like, I feel like I was doing inner child work before I had language for it. I was like, what did you used to love to do? And I thought back to that little girl reading the Teen Vogue magazines, not seeing herself, wanting to write, wanting to express, wanting to be involved in all the beautiful things in life, but not really knowing how I fit in. And I was like, you know, like, I think I saw some fat Black women in this advertisement over here. So let me just try it. And I started like posting online, engaging an audience online, and also then found a community. I was like, there are actually hundreds of women on the internet and also doing work in real life to create a safe space for people that look like me and who feel as like disenfranchised and angry with the conditions and standards of the world that are enforcing this on us, that make us feel like not enough. Like, I am so done with that. And there are women who are already here doing the work, ready to like welcome me with open arms. Like, I can't believe it. And so I just became really engaged, like the body positive space and the self-love space, and like just developing that as my world. I think like I just decided like I need to be really discerning about what I'm taking in. Like, yeah, the vast majority of what I see in media and outside may feel like it's like an echo of what I once felt as a kid, but like I can create a new life. So like, let me just tailor my environment on the internet, what I'm watching, who I'm hanging out with, for people, places, things that make me feel safe. And so I kind of like shared more of my story in that safety about like growing up in a bigger body, about, of course, like Blackness, about queerness, just about all of personal experience. And people just really latched on. And then I got an email one day from an agency in London that was like, hey, do you have representation? And I was like, no, I don't. And they were like, oh, actually, you're in Texas. It's not in a market. But like, if you ever get in one, let us know. And so like, fast forward, I think like 7-ish months later, I moved to New York in like 2018 to like really hone in on what I felt like was like a gift of storytelling in whatever form that meant. And mostly just like trying to collaborate and find out what that meant by being around people of likeness. Right. So I was like, if I move to New York, I will find my tribe, I'll find my folks, and like, I'll see what it could look like for me to be able to make a career out of just being myself and like trying to share stories and writing and of course, like dipping my toes into modeling. And so all of that kind of came to fruition. 3 months after moving here, like had my first professional shoot. And then like my community really took off on the internet, and I've just been kind of fostering that place of safety ever since.
Yeah. I love that. I absolutely love that. You created your own safe space.
Exactly. I
love that. As far as, I know that I watched a clip that you posted actually last night. You were recently on the Tamron Hall show.
I was.
Hearing your journey. Yeah, that's so neat. You said something about just kind of going back to like not accepting your body and the diet culture and all of that. And you mentioned that you were like introduced to a diet pill at the age of 7.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. How did that happen?
You know, I think that there are a few things at play. One, like the way that women have been taught to connect with each other, and I think this specifically starts in the home, is by committing together to occupy less space. And like, I was raised like so many other women in this country or in the world by like amazing, expansive, gorgeous women who like just always wanted to be smaller, and who like were dealing with a lot of internalized self-hate and dealing with a lot of like, you know, just having existed through 80s diet culture and Denise Austin and like all of that like terrible like Atkins, like just that insane whirlwind. And like, it was just impossible to not take that on and to not desperately want it. And so like, when I was younger, I was just like begging my parents to like acknowledge the fact that like I wanted to have the average childhood experience. I wanted to walk into Limited 2 and find something that fit my body. I wanted like once I acknowledged that I had a version of like, I don't know, desire, like I wanted somebody to like me back. Like those were all things that, you know, just as a little girl, like you just imagine, you're like, these are actual human experiences and stepping stones that you feel like will be robbed of you because of what you look like. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, like it's true. Like you know, like the world is unforgiving for a person that doesn't look the way that you expect them to, or that you feel like would make them deserving of like belonging. Mm. And so that was just, I internalized that very early. And so like I hopped on the diet train really, really young. My mom used to take diet pills. And so like I took them out of her purse.
Okay.
And I would go to school. And I remember just like being like so disassociated because I was obviously so young and such a small little body. Like I was just so disassociated because I was like on an apple, a diet pill and vibes all day long.
Jeez.
And like, that is how early kids like internalize the idea that like, they're just not enough. And I don't think that people are that aware of it. And like, truly, like, God bless her. Like I had honestly such an incredible mom, but she is limited in being, you know, a woman of her time. Right. And that's true. That's true for so many. Mm. Right. And like, no matter how much she like verbally wanted to encourage as much self-love as possible. And I think that that's also one distinction that I'm really grateful for is like, my mom was just always like, you got to work with what you got. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is that you have, like show that. Like she was not a woman of like modesty necessarily. And I feel like that's really a part of who I am now is I'm like, I don't believe in modesty. Like say the truth. If you're great at it, say it. You know what I'm saying? If you're gorgeous, say it. Like, if that's what you got, show it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I definitely took that in from her, but there's just so much to be said about like watching somebody that you idolize and think is very beautiful, not be very nice to themselves. Right. And that's true. Like even beyond body image, like if you watch one of your parents self-sacrifice, you take on self-sacrificing, right? If you watch one of your parents be dishonest with themselves, you take on self-deceit. It's like, that is an intrinsic part of the experience of like, you know, just being a sponge that kids are. And that's why we have to be so discerning about how we talk about our bodies and our minds, and also just like our likeness around people who love us, even in adulthood. I think that's like a huge part of my inner child work today is being like, I still have an inner child that's like seeking to be affirmed. And also so do all the people around me. So like, as much as like I value honesty about like having a tough time, like I refuse to like talk to myself with harshness or a lack of self-compassion. And in particular, I refuse to like model that for the inner children or the people that I love around me, because this is also deserving of being a safe space. And I want to encourage that as much as possible.
Absolutely. I absolutely love that. When was like the moment, I guess, that started to shift things for you from that, you know, this, you know, I don't feel like I'm being accepted as I am altogether. Like, was there some moment that happened that you were like, you know what, I'm going to go on social media and like start speaking my voice in this way? And
right.
Like, was there something specific that was the catalyst to do it?
Right. You know, that's such a good question, because I don't think I'd ever acknowledge that there was a specific moment. I think there was a sequence of events. I think one thing was simply like my whole life, I had always, and I think this is really, really common for anybody who was like an outcast or a nerd or like was in some way like othered because of something that just kids hate, is that you like kind of develop these defense mechanisms of being really, really good at something else. And that's where you place your self-esteem, right? So for me, I was always like really smart and accomplished. Like I was so serious and so incredibly like, I was just about my business at a very young age. And so once I like got through college and I realized that like, none of that was really for anything because I wasn't happy. Not only was I not happy, but it probably wasn't going to happen because I had reached such like early stage burnout, what I call like gifted child syndrome. Like you're like given this gold star for being like an old soul and being so accomplished really young. But in reality, it's like kids are only really like that in defense of something going on. Like kids don't naturally have that. They should just be playing, you know, you hear me. And so I feel like that was that kind of like, that was demystified for me once I graduated college. And I was like, oh my gosh, like none of the things that I've been working for actually matter to me. And I do not know what I'm doing. And I don't feel smart and I don't feel accomplished. And for the first time, like I can't look at somebody and say like, this is what I'm doing next. And you should be really proud of me.
Yeah.
And I remember I went to a therapy session in the midst of all of this. And I think this is the second sequence of events. The first thing was graduating college and realizing I'm not going to do what I thought I was going to do. Mm-hmm. The second thing was this first therapy session. It's the first one I'd ever been to in my adult life. And I sat down and she goes, so like, tell me who you are. And I started listing a resume. I was like, well, I'm a resume and other people. I was like, I'm a college graduate. I'm a daughter. I'm this. And she was like, that sounds like a resume. That doesn't sound like a person. And I was so livid. I stormed out of that room and I never returned.
I had a similar first therapy experience.
Exactly.
Conversation, but
exactly. Where I was like, ma'am, I paid you to tell me about myself, but you're doing it too loud. So I'm going to go. But like that today has actually stuck with me. I think that was like, I mean, that was kind of like the beginning of the great crumble of like my ego and all the things that I'd created in self-defense. And now I actually have to look at that like feeling of lack that I was like completely ignoring because of this other stuff that I felt like I could just like, you know, kind of like toggle my self-esteem to, and it would carry me for long enough. Yeah. So I think that was kind of the major shift for me, is being like, oh, like I couldn't actually lie about all of this stuff back here. Like specifically just like, you know, really feeling, I felt really disconnected from like my family and my relationships. Like I had an absent dad. Like there were just so many things that I just had never really acknowledged because just youth, being a kid, nobody tells you that like one day you're going to have to face all of this stuff that you never signed up for by being born.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like nobody tells you that like one day you're going to be an adult. And you won't have these microcosms that like tell you who's good, bad, what's hot, what's not hot. Like now you're just in adulthood and you have to decide what you actually enjoy, whether or not it's a real job and can actually pay your bills. If you care about those things, who are your real friends? What makes a good relationship? What makes a good person? What makes a good person? Right. And all of these questions are tied to like everything you'd experience in childhood and you don't even realize it. So I feel like that was kind of the beginning of that for me. And like social media, being on the internet has always been really inherent for me. Like even when I was younger, I was like an OG Tumblr bitch. Like I just like loved Tumblr. I was like in that for a while. Like at the beginning of my college experience, I also ran a Tumblr page, like had a pretty big following. That was about weight loss. Actually, I lost like over 130 pounds in my freshman year of college. So like that, I felt like a lot of that was me kind of like reclaiming community and space over something that felt like it was expansive. Versus like earlier, it was always kind of about hiding or like finding something that I couldn't find in high school, like in the microcosm of high school, or like while I was in college and I was committing obviously so much time to losing weight because that's what's required to lose 130 pounds. Right. I didn't have anything else. And so I was like, again, trying to connect with people who were maybe like in that same experience. Yeah. And so I feel like it's kind of always been something that I fell on, was like, if you can't, like, if I couldn't find a direct connection here, like I had to find it somewhere. Mm-hmm. And so I just like went to, the big with like the, World Wide Web. I was like, there's surely people out there who are like me. Let's try to find them. Oh. So I feel like it was like kind of a natural instinct for me to like fall back on that. Mm-hmm. Just in hopes of like, if I scream out into the void loud enough, like it'll echo somewhere, like someone will hear me and feel the same way. And we'll be able to create a kind of world that we want to live in together. Yeah. Tell
me a little bit about that journey, that weight loss journey in college, just as far, because I know that obviously there's a lot of mindset shifts and a lot of frustration and confusion and all gamut of emotions that we go through during that time. What was that like for you?
Totally. I mean, it was extremely isolating. Like, it's so funny because, for me, I had always existed like waiting on my weight. like when I was younger, I pictured a life that I could not fit in. Like, you know what I'm saying? I pictured a life where like, I wouldn't be able to, like the current me that's dreaming this, I couldn't fit into those clothes. And I thought that person would never want to date me and that job would never hire me. But if I picture myself in my thinnest form, then I have those things. So I just need to chase that person and be that thinnest form, and then I'll have all those things. Right. And it's so hilarious because I thought that I needed to lose weight in order to have the life that I wanted. But in the actual experience of extreme weight loss, I had to rob myself of those lived experiences in order to lose the weight.
Yeah.
And those are the things that nobody tells you.
Totally.
You know, like, because the average person doesn't have the kind of, I'm going to say A, discipline. I'm going to be so honest, or B, discipline matched with self-hate is a perfect concoction. Mm-hmm. And most people don't have that much of actually either in order to lose 130 pounds. Mm-hmm. But when you have both, it is a recipe for like just self-detonating, basically. Right. Mm-hmm. Because like, and I'd always been that way. Like if I wanted something, I was going to have it. And that's true whether I'm moving from self-love or self-hate. And there was a time in my life when the only thing I knew how to choose was self-hate. And so that's really what it was for me. It was a lot of like self-isolation. I developed orthorexia in that experience because I was just really, really obsessed with like the quality of food and what I was putting in my body. And I was just like, this is the only goal that I felt like I was going to achieve at that time. Because I felt really, really lost and confused at school. And I just needed to gain control, which I think is something that a lot of people don't acknowledge about disordered eating or relationships with our bodies, is how much you can see the direct connection between like your desire for control and your external experiences, and how you're like, well, if I can control any of those things, then I can at least control my body. Right. And so you just take it inward. Mm-hmm. So that was really it for me. It was just like trying to seek control by micromanaging even the things that I put into my mouth. And I mean, I did so to such an extreme that like, I probably went out with my friends maybe like 3 times in the period of that year and a half. Like I couldn't go to restaurants. I lived in Austin as well, which has like a lot of like vegan, like really, really like healthy vegan restaurants. And so I would be like, there's basically 3 restaurants that we can go to that like have what I would physically put into my body. And that's where we meet. And like my friends did like know that. It was really scary. So there was a lot of that. Like I just fully isolated myself, took a lot of time. I think I took a lot of time away from the echo of other people as well. And that also made it quite obvious how much I didn't love about my life and my body and those experiences. And then of course, like at the end of it, I was like, well, I'm kind of seeing the lie in everything that's running through my mind, because again, like all the things that I thought I was looking to have, I have taken away from myself in pursuit of this goal. So what is the goal worth? If I could have just been living these things, like there's work to be done either way. And one of my options is to continue to do this work, which is like to externalize my need for control, make myself smaller, micromanage every bit of food that I put into my body, rob myself of experiences. I can do all those things. Or I can do the internal work.
Yeah.
I can decide that this is a waste of my time, which is very hard because we become addicted to suffering.
Totally.
Right? You become addicted to this narrative. And it's like, well, if I stop telling myself that not being thin is the reason why I don't have this life, then what is my answer? And that's a much harder question.
It is a much harder question. Yeah. Because also we don't have the answer to some of those questions. So it's like the unknown, which is something we don't have the control over. Right. Exactly. It's a vicious cycle. Exactly. It's your worst nightmare. That's exactly it. Yeah. Freedom, I truly think is most people's actual worst nightmare. Like they think that they're working for freedom, but freedom means, especially for a girl with a praise kink, freedom means you're not going to get a gold star. Right. Nobody's going to tell you what your path is, how good you are at it. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody's going to give you the pat on the back for your own, for following your own purpose, because they did not get that message. That was a direct line between you and the divine. Right. Oh, you know what I'm saying? A 2-way call. Totally. So like, you're never going to really get all of the things that I think, like all of the affirmation, validation that we as humans just naturally and instinctively want from others. You're not going to get those things in freedom. So as much as people say that they want it, a lot of people don't want to pay the toll to have to get it. That's so true. Yeah. Because the ultimate freedom is like you with yourself. And like you said, with the divine, like you being okay with you. And that was something I chatted with a girl right before we started talking, and I was telling her that I had an experience recently, which I'm a health coach. I've gone to school for this stuff, so I'm hyper aware, and
right.
What orthorexia is. I know exactly what that is, and because I experienced that myself. Although studying it and having the knowledge, I definitely went through the experience. But a few weeks ago, I caught myself like going to my refrigerator, like looking at it, like closing it, walking away, coming back to my refrigerator, looking at it, walking away. Still nothing got, and I was like, in like the third or fourth time, I was like, Kelly, you know what you're looking for is not in here.
Yes.
Because you would have grabbed it already and it would have been in your belly. Like,
right.
Not here. Right. So I was like, what? Obviously, like, we need to like journal this out right now, or like just have the conversation, the dialogue with yourself right now, and walk your way through, talk your way through this.
Totally.
And I live alone. I'm single. Like I want a companion. I just want a company. Like, I just want to be here.
Yes, totally.
So
yeah, exactly. It's so interesting. I also really recently, so in 2020, I got out of like the most toxic relationship to date, which I always say I think was like the big boss of like my kind of like early life renewal. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, we all have the ex from 2019 that ruined our lives. You know what I'm saying? Yours may have been very public. I don't know. we all have.
I mean, 2020, yes, the 2020, but he did not ruin my life. No, he was not one that ruined my life, but I did recognize a lot of things. Like my first mindset coach that I hired was like maybe a month after we got done filming Love is Blind. And I was just, disheveled from the whole filming process, because right. The guy and I we had conversations about dating after the show, although we didn't get married, but then that didn't happen. So I was rejected, and that whole thing. I just felt so heartbroken, because I'm like, I just spent the last 7 weeks with someone who I have shared more information with, like, about my personal life than a lot of people, and it's over, it's gone, and I didn't really have closure, so I was like,
oh my God.
We all go to so yeah, I mean, it hurt really bad, but working with the coach,
totally.
Working with the mindset coach, she helped me bring to life the real pain. And she was like, are you in love with him? Or like, is the pain because you're so in love with him? Or is the pain because you are feeling rejection?
Yes.
And I was like, it's rejection. I said, I've had a sequence of being rejected my whole life. And my whole, like, my deep rooted story of feeling unworthy is about rejection. Like, the what's wrong with me narrative is the underlying premise of everything.
Yes, that's the culprit. That's the culprit. 100. Yeah. And thank God that we get the release of a breakup. Yeah. I think that's something that once you come to that, once you're able to face the fact that you're just most upset about being told no, right? And the fact that it reaffirms something that you already believed in yourself, that you were already kind of looking for, right, in that dynamic, you're able to face like, oh, I remember other times in my life where that rejection clicked for me. And instead of saying, you know what, I heard you and I'm going to walk the other way, you like go into overdrive to prove that you should be there.
Yep.
And that's the worst case scenario. Yes. Right. And that's like, I think that is something that in the last like 3 years was the most transformative idea for me, was like, it is better to truly let it go. Like you feeling the need to like prove yourself, anything that makes you feel like you need to prove yourself, or that makes you feel like your vulnerability was for naught, which I think is kind of what I heard you say as well. And I think that that's what's really hard, is like when you do have a rejection or abandonment wound, you often, like I think a lot of us end up becoming coaches, you end up becoming inspirational speakers, inspirational whatever, because you just want to offer people what you wish you had at a time. And a lot of that comes from that feeling of like being just naturally, innately so vulnerable, because you hope that it'll grant you like belonging and grant you acceptance into somebody else's heart, right? And when you really actually show up for true vulnerability instead of just oversharing,
right,
it is the scariest thing in the world, because that means that now somebody is actually rejecting you. Again, you can't say it's the way you look. You can't say that it's because you don't make enough money. You can't say it's because of you have a shitty personality, because none of those things are true. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right, exactly.
It's just simply because it didn't mesh. Right. But ultimately what didn't mesh was like the deepest, most honest parts of yourself. And that hurts. Like that is why people would just rather do the ticking of the boxes, right? And choose people based on superficial shit and want to be chosen off of superficial shit, because it actually hurts so much worse to walk away from somebody who, you know, actually knows you and still doesn't feel like it makes sense, even though it's not about you. Right. But like, no matter what, that's what we hear. And like, I'm so grateful to, you know, be at a time in my life where I am finally able to, I feel like, not only just see, but reap the reward of walking away. And not with the need to villainize somebody else or to villainize myself. It's just simply like, well, if this wasn't enough, then this wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. You know, like I do believe that there's more. And a lot of that's the abundance mindset, you know, of being like, I know that there are almost at this point 8 billion people in this world. Like, at least half of them can probably do for me in some way. And like a quarter of them are probably really great. Do you know what I mean? Like there is going to be another great friend and another great partner and chosen family. And like the best thing we can do for ourselves is walk away so that you have space for that, instead of like doubling down in the rejection, just in hopes that this one person can validate you in a way that like, A, you need to validate yourself in. B, like you should find community around, right? Like find amazing friends, like find a therapist if it's accessible to you, find group therapy, find a coach. Like those are the unsung heroes of the self-love journey, is our community. As much as self is in the title, but ultimately I think it is community love that ends up saving us from our own demise.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I just loved everything that you just said, because you know, it's interesting because yes, I've done a lot of healing work and everything. But I did play into that worst case scenario and held on to it for far too long. I recognized, you know, a sequence. It's funny because it's like God shows up when you're asking and you're like, okay, like we've been playing this game for a little while, Kelly, you know, like, okay, I'm going to make sure you're sure this time, because you keep doing the same song and dance. And I know that's like a part of my healing journey and everything. Right. Like a sequence, I was, you know, entertaining this person that like I said, I've been in this dance with for a while, and like 2 different things happened simultaneously, literally within 48 hours. And I was like, God is just like
screaming at you.
Kelly, do you hear me? Do you hear me? Like, wake up, like open your eyes, open up all portals of yourself. Like, do you see? Do you hear? Do you feel what you just felt last night or 2 nights ago, and now you're feeling it at an even deeper level right now? Like, no more. Yes. No more. And that was it. And I literally haven't reached out. I haven't talked to it. And I sent my girlfriend a message this morning, literally. And I was like, I have to tell someone, because I have to tell someone for the accountability in a sense. I go, yes. I was really mad 3-4 weeks ago. I was like, I had a moment today, and maybe it's because I'm about to start my period. I don't know. Maybe my hormones are crazy. I said, but I had a moment today that I missed the person, and I was like, oh, I just want to like see how he's doing, kind of thing. And then I go, but then I reminded myself how much of not a priority I was for him. And it reminded him that he was not choosing me. So, okay. But I'm just telling you, the like anger isn't there really anymore. Now I feel like I'm in the grieving, like the sad part of grieving. Right. So, yes. But I just needed to like tell somebody that.
Totally.
She's like, just stay strong, gal.
Yeah, exactly. And just to be acknowledged, right? Like it's so, and I love the fact that you had somebody who, again, like could just acknowledge, like, that's good work that you're doing, versus being like there is nothing more challenging than being in a situation where like, you're like, girl, I know better, but I don't feel better. And I'm working on the feeling better part, right? Like it's very, very easy to like intellectualize why like better decisions can be made in a lot of these circumstances, obviously, namely in dating and romance. It's like, you can feel when somebody's not feeling you the same. You know, you know what I'm saying? You know, that like just aching pain in the pit of your stomach, like, you know, that feeling. And sometimes like you're still going to make the dumb bitch choice. You know what I mean? And you need somebody who's just going to be like, I believe in you. And I know this is hard work. And listen, if you make this tough decision today, we always have tomorrow. And I'll be here with you then too. You know, like, who can just show you the grace that maybe you don't have for yourself often. Cause I think, you know, like really highly intelligent women who are seekers and who want to be better so badly, I think we tend to be like a completely different spectrum of like, kind of like just self-criticizing in a way that people who just want for less are, because you expect more of yourself. Yeah. And in those moments when you're feeling self-betrayal, like you need somebody who is like, holds up a mirror and is like, babe, like, look at how amazing you are. Like, it is okay to not be perfect and to not make the perfect choice every time. You're human. And like, I know you're going to get there, because I don't know anybody who wants to get there more than you.
Right. Right.
You know, yeah. And we have to remind ourselves of that. Like, I know for me, like, there's nobody who wants to get there for me more than me. As much as I like will fall on my face, I'm hoping to fall upward. I'm going to dust myself off and try again. But like, I'm going to put my hand on the stove again, just because I like the feeling of heat. I'm going to try the new experience. You know, like I know that about myself, but it's like, it's just not worth beating myself up over, because like at the worst case scenario, in the end, I'm going to have a great story to tell to sit on the podcast with Kelly Chase.
Yeah. Thank you. It's so true. It is. So
you know, like that's the worst case scenario, is like one day you'll be able to share the story and say like, you know, I was dumb in this way then. I'll be dumb in a different way soon. Right. But like, this is the lesson I took from this. And I did it because I was brave.
Yeah.
I was brave. I showed up for the challenge. I showed up for the work. I made the best decision with like the capacity for love that I had at that point. And now I have more.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. And what you said earlier about the vulnerability, like the rejection, like after being so vulnerable with someone, you know, and it's like, I think that is why the dance has continued so much, because this person, right. I've known them for a while. Like they know everything about me, you know? So it's totally like that rejection. It's like, wow, you know, but when I'm feeling rejected by them and I'm trying to prove myself, well, maybe if I do this, then they'll like me, you know, or maybe they'll want me. So it's like that inner dialogue or subconsciously, you know, but it's like, wow, that's when we are rejecting ourselves. And then that's like the biggest thing. And then I'm like, you know, not necessarily like shaming myself, but I'm like, damn it, Kelly, like you're out here preaching and you're walking fine. Like, don't like, you got to align your actions with your words and your words with your actions. And again, I am in many other ways. It's funny because like with other guys that I like go on dates with and stuff.
Right.
I am so quick to be like, yeah, that's not aligned and I'm done. And I walk the other way. But like this
totally
fucking kryptonite, like get away.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so funny. Like I have kind of experienced that too in the last few years. So when I broke up with my ex in 2020, again, I went through the full grieving process over again, and mostly in a loop simply because I could not acknowledge the fact that I just felt rejected. I was like, babe, you didn't love that person. I'm not even sure you loved the person before him. You know what I'm saying? I'm not even sure you loved the person before that, because ultimately a lot of these relationships were you playing out your rejection wound, were you playing out like simply wanting to be cared for and to be told that you're vulnerable, be rewarded for your vulnerability in the form of a partnership. But like, that's just like, own back your vulnerability. Like, why are you like, what? It's not, you shouldn't be oversharing for the sake of people seeing who you are and then wanting to have it. You should be sharing what you're comfortable with and what you're comfortable with people rejecting. So if you're sharing, but you're not comfortable with it being rejected, then maybe that's just for you. Maybe that's sacred space. Right. So like, I think that like, that was a huge thing for me, coming to the awareness, like, what's my sacred space? And like, do I need to be sharing this with people when I'm first dating them? Maybe that's not the version of vulnerability that I'm like showing up for in dating right now, because if it results in me, not being able to walk away because it triggers me, right? Or B, if it results in me feeling resentful about having shared that, then like it wasn't safe enough. I haven't created enough safety enough for myself and like sharing those parts of myself with somebody. Right. And a huge part of restoring that was like, after I got out of that relationship, obviously it was lockdown. So that automatically cut out the like ability to just run onto an app and like get a casual hookup and just distract myself. I mean, that actually was probably not true for many people, but it was for me. That was a boundary for me. And then I was actually celibate for like a year and a half.
Oh, wow.
And that was really formative for me. It wasn't about sex, really. I mean, there were parts of it where like I did acknowledge that, again, I've had a very hard fought battle with my body. I am a curvy Black woman, which makes me inherently more sexualized than the average person. And so there are a lot of people who do approach with or without their knowledge with the intent to like put me into a space or like feel entitled to me in a way that I may not be able to see because I am approaching connection with like a naivety of like, I just want to be with you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just want to connect, or I just want to have sex, or I just want to get to know you. But for them, it's like an assumed thing that I'll do for them because of the way that I look. So I think that that was a layer of it. But ultimately it was like, I acknowledge that for me sometimes, and I think this is true for a lot of like progressive women who like, you know, I think kind of did the pendulum swing of like, well, I'm not a slut shamer and I'm not anti do your thing, girl. But when I'm doing my thing, girl, I'm also not being super mindful of maybe how harmful or self-sabotaging it can be to share myself intimately in ways that like I'm not prepared for with people who don't actually respect or care about me. That is a version of self-sabotage, right? And so like acknowledging that for myself was great. And also acknowledging the fact that like sometimes I think that I was seeking to create like a feigned version of intimacy or like expedite the intimacy process so that I wouldn't have to go through the discomfort of like the rejection zone. Like if I just sleep with them, then we have a connection in a way that I could probably get away with having for longer than just simply being rejected off the like second or third date.
Right.
And I think that that's something that a lot of people cannot acknowledge for themselves and you really don't see until you do take a little step back. And it's like, oh, okay, in that year and a half, I like could pinpoint specific moments where I was like, ooh, you know, I had a really tough week at work and like, I didn't really get the kind of gratifying, like the gratification that I typically get in spaces where I feel a lot of self-esteem. And so I would love to just like hop on a dating app and maybe go meet somebody and have a cute little night. And because I had that boundary, instead of doing that thing, I was able to see why I was doing that thing, right? What I was running away from. Like I was fearful of visibility. I was fearful of stepping into my purpose. I was fearful of, you know, just like all the things that are just natural human reactions to following a purpose, human reactions to like trying to be in self-discovery and to like also just being courageous and doing what we do, like sharing yourself so widely with people. Like that creates a lot of room for insecurity. And if you don't do the work, you'll be like trying to like, you know, patch up a hole at the bottom of a boat while you're sinking, you know, like it's never really going to feel like you're fully buoyed. So I think that like, yeah, doing that was really amazing for me because now I'm in a place where you know, I'm just in any room to connect. Mm-hmm. We could be friends. We could be nothing at all. We could be temporary lovers. We could be for forever. I know in this moment, I am looking for, again, my definition of love, a commitment to my well-being. Yeah. And anybody who is a practitioner of love in that way and follows that definition, I will be safe with regardless of the context of that relationship. But if you're not that, I will never be safe. So we probably can't be friends. We probably can't be any of those things, you know? So I think that that's kind of how I'm approaching dating in a more open way, is like really interrogating, like, do I even like you? I'm not worried about whether or not you like me. There are a lot of reasons why you should like me. I don't know if I like you, and I'm more concerned with that. And then I'm also concerned about just like compatibility and like what my body feels like right now. Like somatically, do I feel nervous? Do I feel anxious? Are the things that you're saying make me clam up? Do I feel like now I have to fill space? Like there are a lot of indications for me physically that I know I'm uncomfortable, even if my brain hasn't caught up to the fact that like, yeah, you're charming, but something about your energy is putting me off, you know? So I think that like learning to really tap into that was also granted to me by a little solitude and taking some space.
Yeah, absolutely. Besides that celibacy and tapping in and feeling your intuition and your body, you mentioned somatic, like, have you ever worked with like a somatic coach or a somatic healer or done any somatic therapy?
Right. Yeah. So I have been in practice. I've been in CBT for like, maybe 4 or 5 years. And I started EMDR about 2 years ago.
Okay. So cognitive therapy, is that CBT?
Yes. Yeah. And so I started EMDR, which is really, it's a very somatic experience of like creating a sensory safe space and connecting with your body. And in the recall process, it's like kind of complicated to explain if you're not in it, but in the recall process, you're like immediately drawn into memories. And so you kind of acknowledge those memories because of the way that they made you, like the fact that you were able to bring them up was because you were engaged in the physical process with your body. Right. And so that was very helpful. My current therapist, she doesn't only do EMDR, but even when we're not in the stage of that process, a lot of it is like doing tapping when she feels my voice pacing or something, or like becoming shallow. She's like, why don't we just hold ourselves? Why don't we acknowledge this? Let's do some breath work together. And so I've incorporated those mindfulness practices with my body into my life, which of course has been so transformative. One, because breath is life energy and we almost never take a full breath. So that's amazing. Love that. And just like, I'm realizing how often I'm just ignoring my body. I'm ignoring the like brilliant cues that I have access to all the time.
Right. Oh, I love that. Yeah. I've just probably been more, I guess, introduced and learning more about the like somatic stuff. I mean, I did my first breath work session, like intense breath work, in 2019. And like I said, I've never felt that before. Maybe actually, I actually had done a breathwork session. It was like very short. It was like a mini, like 20-minute session where, yes, I was able to feel, and I
right.
But like the 2019, it was like a 45-minute session, and like, holy bananas, like the things that I felt and remembered, but also the release that happened during that time. It was just so epic. And, I've done now a handful of breathwork sessions too, but just the somatic stuff. I've never done the EMDR. I hear it's very powerful, but yeah, I mean, the somatic stuff is something that I'm just like starting to tap into myself and just be more into. And I had a session with someone recently. She was actually on my podcast also recently. And, but she had me do, just feel into my body. And so she was just asking me questions and helping me drop in and, about that scenario, about that situation, and or that relationship. And I was like, oh my gosh, it feels, and granted, this was maybe like a week after like those 2 48-hour events happened. So I was like, birds of the anger and everything. And so I was like, yeah, it's just feeling like, it feels like really like a inconsistent, erratic contraction. That's what it feels like. It's like doing this in my body. And it was like,
wow.
And then she had me like tap into that even more. And one of the things that it came up, I was like, well, it feels like that, what's wrong with you, came up. And I go, he has just been a distraction to that root. It's just distracting you from healing that, diving deeper. But then we did this whole thing where she had me like kind of visualize my soulmate.
Right.
And then I said, well, there is still a little bit of like that erratic contraction. I said, but, and I'm just being so self-aware. I go, but that's probably some self-sabotage.
Right.
Yep. Okay. So we're going to sit there for a minute and let's see if that self-sabotage moves itself out of the way. And yeah, probably within like 30 seconds, it started to calm down. And I was like, it's still a contraction. I said, but it's more of like a regular, like ebb and flow. And she's like, there's a connection. And you experience a contraction when you're in these moments with guys, not with guys in general. Any relationship can have you do this. She goes, but when you're, on a date or even on a dating app, like when you're looking at someone's stuff, or, like I said, if when you're on the date and like they say, recognize how your body feels. Is it that tight contraction?
Yes.
Go into your head and be like, wait, am I self-sabotaging? Is this like a fear going on? Or is this like a no, I need to abort?
Totally. Exactly. Okay. And just like, that work is so amazing for, a million reasons. One, like from an internal standpoint, like a relationship, me, myself, and I, it's incredible just because of like all of the ways that we're robbed from this relationship with our bodies. Right. Again, it's as early as just like not eating when you want to eat, Then we like enter the workforce. You're not sleeping when you need to sleep. You don't get regular movement because you're there from a 9 to 5 and to some extent, or if you're self-employed, 24/7. You know what I'm saying? Like there's always an excuse to ignore your body. Like even I, after years of trying to do this healing work, in my relationship with food, I find myself being like, let me just finish this email and then do this and then do this and then I'll have lunch. And the second I actually am cognizant of me saying that, I know that it's immediately, I'm like, oh, all right, I'm putting my laptop down. Like when I actually recognize that I said it, it's an immediate, nope, we're creating a different connection. We're creating a different pathway. We don't need to engage this. Go eat now because your inbox will still be there. Gmail is not shutting down anytime soon. And so like, even those things are a direct connection between our inability to like be with somebody and feel what feels good. Like, how can we access pleasure and then create more of it? How can we access joy and create more of it if we don't even know how to identify it? And that for me was really like the major thing that clicked once I started engaging with my current therapist and she kind of introduced me to all of this stuff. I was like, it is actually wild how long I have been denying myself in my relationship with my body, but also like just always defaulting to the intellect. Yeah. And like, if I can figure it out, then it'll be okay. If I can figure out the formula here as to why we're not clicking and I just fit myself into whatever the problem is, then then it'll be done. Right. Like I can stop being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And now with a kind of a more closely connected somatic experience, I realized like, well, when I used to do that, when I used to just fit myself into the problem, I was compounding on my own discomfort in order to what I felt like was get out of discomfort. But in reality, I was evading accountability and discomfort for other people. Right. In doing that so often. It's like, that was actually their shit to figure out. But now you took it on simply because you could not sit around it. Yeah. So let's figure out some boundaries. Yeah. Let's figure out some boundaries. Let's figure out some discernment, and let's really, really get into our energy. Like when you're feeling your most joyful, your most expansive, free, like I always picture myself like summer of 2020, I would spend hours at Herbert Von King Park here in Bed-Stuy, and I would just lay out with the sun on my face on like a towel light years from the next person. And I could tell that we were just all there to just be like little flowers and take in solar energy. And I remember that feeling so distinctly because that is what I picture when I'm like going into a safe space. And I know that that's how I want to feel around a partner, around a good friend, a lifelong friend, a new lifelong friend, around any business partnership or a project that I take on. I want to feel like I'm laying in the sun again at Herbert Von King Park when I had no one calling me and nothing to do. That is when I want to feel like again, you know? And so to me, like, that's the feeling of like being with a soulmate or like having, a connection that I know is like filled with purpose or like ordained, and like intended to be. That is what that feels like to me. So like once I've identified that feels like, I just started to kind of model my life after that because I've come to realize like my intellect is kind of my biggest hater sometimes, like she's not always going to know the most for me because she's gotten really, really smart. And that's resulted in so many gorgeous things, such a beautiful life. But like, there are some ways in which we're still carrying on with like building systems and narratives and blockages that like just aren't working for us anymore that can be solved with feeling a little bit.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. I resonate with something you said. So there was a time last year I was working with a life coach and we were going through like a money mindset exercise actually. And, but she had me do this exercise. And anyway, she like asked me something and I was like, okay, it's associated with like, parental like belief or whatever. And then, there was a part of me that was like struggling like with finances in certain ways. And I was like, she asked me a question and I was like, I sat with it for like literally a half a second. And then I was like, but I know what I need to do. And she was like, okay, so you went from, I asked you to sit, like, I think she was asking me to like sit with the feeling.
Right.
I immediately went to like problem solving mode and I was like, I know what to do. And she goes, so she helped bring that awareness to me. She's like, you're constantly trying to figure it out. She's like, and I'm asking you to acknowledge the pain right now. And you're avoiding the pain. And I was like,
no, it's too loud. Stop.
Oh my. Right. Oh my gosh. She's like, feel it. And even like, I sat there for like a few seconds with it. And then I was like, okay, like, yeah. And she's like, oh, you like, it feels better now. And I was like, I think so. And she's like, you think so or so? I was like, I guess, yeah, you're right. I'm still avoiding it. I don't know.
No, exactly. No, that is literally me in therapy every Tuesday. I'm like, girl, like, if you ask me how it feels one more time, like, I don't know, I'm felt out. I'm, you know what I'm saying? I am touched out. And that's like, really, that's real too. Like, it's just so, it's so fascinating. Like, you come into this new awareness of how you can treat yourself better. And then immediately you want to go into overdrive to like, okay, how can I center my entire life around this thing? Again, I just want to be better, right? I just want to be better for myself. So now let me make my whole life around finding this new solution. It's like, have you ever thought that your solution is nothing? That is often how I try to pose like myself with that question. It's like, have you ever thought that your solution is nothing? Like, the power of pause can be very powerful. Let's try it. The power of simply resorting back to the simplest solution. Like, the way that I can create the most complicated story imaginable, like even right now, it's like for a while, I've been like kind of seeing somebody who like I probably really shouldn't be. And for a while I was like, well, here's the thing is that we could be this kind of thing or this kind of thing. And like, then the other stuff won't really matter. Right. Like creating this like fully compartmentalized version of myself and of the situation to where I can justify sitting in discomfort or like not being in the feeling. And then of course that creates this other complex in me that's trying to create solutions. And it's like, the solution is actually to really do nothing in the situation. Like, because I can imagine in almost every situation where you're questioning whether or not you should be there, the answer is no. But if you need to ask yourself again, think about the fact that like, it's not obvious to you.
That's powerful.
Like if you need to ask yourself again, think about the fact that it's not obvious to you. Because I just think that love and things that are embodied in love show up in such clarity. And I know that because I know that about myself.
Yeah, exactly. You go first.
That's it. You go first. Yes, exactly.
One of my former mentors, that's like what she always used to say, you go first. Like with your business, your relationships, everything, like you have to go first. Like,
I love that. That's powerful and so simple.
Yeah, it is. Gosh, this has been so good.
It has. I'm like, I could talk to you for so long. You know what? I'm not shocked though. I will say I was so excited when you reached out because I actually really loved you from the show. I thought you were amazing. And I definitely like felt your energy. And then also not that long ago, I had discovered your TikTok when you were kind of doing some tell-all stuff. And I was like, she's iconic. She's iconic because you are like so like evolved and like just so like eloquent and like gracious and graceful and like you can feel all of that, but you're also like a little bit shady. Yeah. And I love that because I'm exactly that flavor where like I'm still gonna tell it like it is though. You know what I mean?
I know I got a little slap on the back of the hand for those TikToks. That's why I stopped doing them. I was like,
what? I'm bummed about that.
I know, I am too. I'm trying to like, I mean, granted, this was a couple months ago, but I'm still trying to like, kind of like find my groove on TikTok a little bit. I'm trying to find I don't know, like the conversation I was having before we sat down, it's like, I've studied the mind so much in this healing work. Like we know that it affects literally every area of your life. So, it's like, as you have a business and everything, it's like, okay, everyone is always like, you niching down and like having a niche to
yes.
And then so the internet knows like, oh, I'm gonna, I know this girl, she's like really good in home decor. I know this girl, she's good in body positivity. So like you go, like, I don't know if I have like a name for myself yet, like in the sense of, that's the Love is Blind girl, but I'm like, I'm so much more than Love is Blind,
Yeah, totally.
It's like, I am everything. Like, yeah, I'm a self-love like guru and stuff, but I think there's so many different facets to self-love, like from, relationships to career and business to money mindset.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And it's just like, I feel like, okay, I'm like having these like strategy conversations in my head and I just need to be like creating and who gives a shit about the fucking strategy kind of thing. But I'm like, should I focus on like one thing at a time? Like talk about like relationships for like a month and then like career for a month or something like that. But I think about these things like all together all the time. So it's just.
No, it's really, no, I understand completely. I mean, cause I think I operate in a very similar regard of like, I have been on the internet for so long, but for me, or like I've just been in media for so long, but for me, it's like, I'm really just trying to be on the climb of my life and let people watch me do it. You know, like I don't really care about engaging a niche. Nothing will ever be my thing, which is the good news. There was a time, you know, like there was a time when I was like so obsessed with like my thing. And I've always been really, really in touch with like a spiritual practice to some extent before it became very much the forefront of like my persona. But I have been going to psychics for years. And I remember last year I went to the psychic. I actually don't even want to call her a psychic because really she just like enters your energy field and she's like, okay, I'm you now. And she just like explains your energy, how it feels, what you're into, like where you're going, whatever. She's amazing. Her name is Wendy. So I went to go see Wendy. And I remember at one point towards the end, because she doesn't want you to talk. She just goes. And then towards the end, she was like, okay, so now I think I'm exhausted. Like, do you have any questions? And I was like, you know, like, I think I literally said, like, will I ever like be known for something? Like, will I be known for something?
Huh.
And she said, you know, Kendra, that is so, she was like, for the kind of energy that I am sitting in right now, that is the most limiting thing you could have asked me.
Wow.
And she dragged my ass to hell and back in that single moment. I was like, you're right. This is the final thing I needed to let go. And like I think like my brand perception is like, and even just as my identity, like as a creator of like source and joy and all these things, like I'm not going to have a thing. Like I am just simply supposed to be me. That is my supposed to. I have no supposed to's except for be me, you know? And like, you know, I think it's really challenging because of the tool, you know, I'm hearing you in that, like, you're attempting to use the tools to your best interests, right? Use the tools to your best interests, try to like maximize your time, which is very limited. That is real and limited, right? And so it's like, if I'm going to be on TikTok, like how I'm going to do it. If I'm going to be on Twitch, if I'm going to be on whatever platform, whatever tool you're trying to use, it's like, how am I going to do it? And for me, I've just come to terms with the fact that like, I don't want to go like, I'm not seeking hyper visibility. I'm seeking impact.
Right. Correct. Yes.
Right. And like, yes, exactly. It's like, I'm not seeking hyper visibility. I'm seeking impact. And when people are talking about bottling up your content into a niche, they're doing that because they assume that you exist within the value system of hyper visibility. But if you are seeking impact, that means you're probably going to result in falling on the ears and eyes of the few that soon becomes the mighty.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And that's what you have to be okay with, right? Because again, that's what we are. If you want to exist in a space of resonance, we're the few but mighty. So that's what you're going to attract.
Yeah.
And like, just let that speak for itself, you know? That's it. And that's really how I'm feeling at this point. I'm like, there is no niche. Like for me, it's just like, I want to help people understand how to be human in a way that feels as joyful as possible. We've got we're an infinite being in a finite period of time. And I want to live that time with as much fullness and honesty as I can and help people do the same. And I'm eliciting all the tools that I have in my toolbox to make that happen and sharing them. And like, that's going to include a lot of things. Like I get into pottery. I'm going to get into music. I'm going to get into spiritual. It's like all those things are tools for this becoming. And like, that's all a part of it, you know, and that's all I can really share. I don't want to have to piece parts of myself and send them up a river in order to like find some hyper visible groove, you know?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Maybe that's the part of the conversation I needed to hear today. So thank you.
Of course. Absolutely. No, you've been such a treat. So nice to meet you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So tell people where they can find you. And if you're obviously the Realest Oracle deck you're promoting, but if there's anything else you want to share about.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. You can find me at Kendra on all platforms, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. I also do run a Substack newsletter called Come Home, which is about returning back to belonging in ourselves and our spiritual practice. And that's KendraAustin.substack.com. And then, yeah, you can pre-order the Realest Oracle. and all places that sell books. Yeah, I'm so excited to watch everybody use them. I think it's going to be really fun.
Yeah, that is. Congratulations again on everything. And
Thank you.
I was gonna say, when you were talking to the psychic, for lack of a better term, and you asked her that question, she obviously came back with that. But it's like, my response wanted to be like, you already are known for something.
I love that.
That's what came up for me when, like, if you were.
Thank you. I love that. Thank you so much. I received that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Keep doing what you're doing. Keep shining your light. Of course, you are creating the impact. I get it too. Like, sometimes I don't remember that I'm doing, like, what I'm doing is creating impact. And even if it's just one person's eyes, like, at least that one person was meant to hear that message or see that message that day. So,
totally. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be in community with you. And yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks, girl. Yay. If you loved this episode, please download, share, rate, and review. If you are ready to step into that next level version of you and grow your business and bank account, it's time to unleash your goddess magic and chase life with Kelly. You can start this epic expansion journey by diving into the Goddess Magic course bundle found at chaselifetogether.com. Please connect with me on Instagram at Chase Life with Kelly. Join the Chase Life with Kelly Facebook community and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Till next time, create the life you crave, babe, and chase life with Kelly.